The bases dropped on an evening edition of Soccer Down Here. I'm Jason Longshore. It is SDH after dinner, according to some. It is SDH PM after some. It is the Happy Hanukkah edition of SDH. John Nelson is here. You just can't see him because he will be in and out and running about.
Well done. In and out and running about, yeah.
I've been talking all day, so I'm in a flow, I guess. I don't know. It's either good or bad. I don't know if that's going to happen.
I'm down with it, whatever it is.
We will see what happens.
Yep. 6:15, I have to duck out for my weekly visit with a friend of the network, Ryan Payton, and Sirius XM Canada Talks. And so I will be done for a segment there and then drifting back in until 8 o'clock when I drift out.
When we're leaving. When we're leaving.
Yeah. Okay, we're leaving at 8? Okay.
We're leaving at 8.
Okay.
Remember, I did 4 hours of radio today, and I'm doing 4 hours of radio tomorrow, so we're leaving at 8. No 3-hour show today, y'all. Don't even get any ideas.
So then after we leave at 8, then I hop on with other friend of network and friend of SDH, Joe Pasek, and his Barn Burner Live, where he wants me to talk about MLS Cup. So, yeah, in and out and in and out. I can step in, I can step out, I can step back in. So that's what it is with me tonight.
You didn't make a hokey pokey reference. I figured you would.
No. It was a MASH reference in dealing with quarantine. It's a very, very early episode involving Hawkeye and Frank. It was Hawkeye and Charles Emerson Winchester. I can step in, I can step out, I can step in, I can step out, in and out of the swamp. In, out, in, out.
A hokey pokey reference would have been bad, but people would have actually known what it was.
Now, yeah, so for me, no. Obscure references, once again, for 500, so I went with a MASH episode.
Oh, good grief.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. All right. We will be talking to Bart Keeler at 6:20 ish. We'll be talking to Bart about U.S. men's national team from last night. Not really tested in a match with El Salvador. Not much of a concern with that game. Chris Mueller had himself a night. We'll get Bart's take on how everything went down. Let's start, John, with everything that's happened in Europe since we were here last. We have knockout rounds. At least we know who's there. We don't know what the matchups will be yet. That draw is on Monday, but we know who will be playing. And let's go back to yesterday with Champions League, because we had a few things that came out the way we thought they would. There were a few surprises on the final match day. Group A, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid go through. Red Bull Salzburg goes to the Europa League. There was a time where Bern's concerns about Salzburg getting into a spot where Lokomotiv could pass them were valid. Lokomotiv held Bayern off for a while, and Salzburg gave up a somewhat early goal. They had some good chances early. Madrid ends up getting the lead. It looked like it could turn. Then Bayern Munich remembered they were Bayern Munich, even though maybe some of the regular players were not playing for Bayern Munich. They still had the crest, and they took care of Lokomotiv Moscow 2-0. Atleti went to Salzburg. Big win for Atleti to win 2-0, and they go through in second place. Not a shock when these groups were drawn.
No, and you look at A, and Bayern wraps it up with 5 wins out of the 6 contests, only giving up 5 goals in the entire group stage, and pretty much how, at least when we were talking it through, how this was going to end up with Bayern and Atleti 1-2.
Winterwind and Chiefs coach Steve got your MASH reference, by the way.
Sweet.
Yeah, no, that scored more than I thought it would. Group B, this was one that we did not know where it would go. It was twisting and turning throughout. Real Madrid stepped up. Sergio Ramos back. Zinedine Zidane's job is on the precipice. Didn't really care. They won 2-0, and they controlled the match against Borussia Mönchengladbach. Inter and Shakhtar was a little baffling in some ways. First, it's a scoreless draw. Inter is out of everything. The Champions League has not been kind to Inter, has not been kind to Antonio Conte. Shakhtar, though, as this game was dwindling down, they had an opportunity to win the match and go into the knockout rounds of the Champions League. Now, I guess the flip side for them, this is the conundrum that we discussed yesterday with Red Bull Salzburg. That would potentially put them at risk of losing the match and not being in Europe.
Right.
They opted for the safe route. They were time wasting. They were not going for the game. I thought they had opportunities where they didn't even have to risk much and they could have went for the game. They did not. Inter running up against the brick wall over and over and over again and falling down. And Mönchengladbach watched the conclusion of that game from pitch side. Pretty cool scenes from Madrid after they lost and really didn't look good in a 2-0 loss. Watched that other match finish scoreless, and they knew they were into the knockout round. So it worked out for Mönchengladbach. You disappointed with Shakhtar's mentality here, or did you understand it?
I understood it, but at the same time, I look at the group stage with Shakhtar and how they lost. I think it was 10-0 total to Borussia Mönchengladbach. I think it was 6-0, 4-0.
Yeah, they beat Madrid twice, though.
I know. And, just if the goal difference had been a little closer, if you hadn't had Blowout City with those two.
No, it didn't matter.
True chaos.
No, but I know, but it didn't matter on the day. I don't care about what it could have been. Are you disappointed in your masters of chaos out of Ukraine not living up to it? They kind of just said, well, we'll take the Europa League, thanks.
Well, I think of it, when you lose 10-0 and you're going into it with a goal difference of -7, you would have had to, if things work their way through, you're having to basically win a match by 2 touchdowns.
No. You're misunderstanding me, John. I don't know why this is difficult. Mönchengladbach was losing early on. Shakhtar knew that. If Shakhtar won the match, they're going into the knockout stage of the Champions League. Period. Doesn't matter about goal differential from previous games. If they win this match against Inter, who was not exactly inspiring, they're going into the knockout round. They made no effort to win the match. They played scared not to lose it, which guaranteed Europa League. But they didn't really take their chance for Champions League.
No, they didn't. And it's disappointing considering what we saw them do against Real Madrid in group stage, where you saw them do things earlier on in group, and you're sitting there going, okay, there's something here. And then with this last match, you're just kind of like, eh. And yeah, very disappointing with what we're seeing with Shakhtar, no doubt.
Shakhtar, if you're scared, get a dog.
Yes, exactly.
When Christopher Abel is describing your play as looking Big Sam-esque.
Wow.
It did. They had a scoreless draw that they were afraid of losing. I mean, it was Big Sam-esque.
Yeah, but it's just like, I don't know where this comes from. I don't know.
Gutless.
Well, yes, I'm agreeing with you here. It's just I don't know where that DNA showed up, where that started, because you had an opportunity and you didn't do anything with it.
Are there things that make you angry?
Yes, Shakhtar being gutless.
Yes.
Group C, Manchester City, Porto go through. Olympiacos goes into the Europa League. That is, I would say, exactly as we would have picked it coming in. Maybe some people thought Marseille might have done something. They did not here. They lost 3-0 to Manchester City. Clean sheet for Zach Steffen. Good day for him in his Champions League debut. No surprises with anything else. Group D, it's Liverpool and Atalanta, who went to the Netherlands, beat Ajax on a late goal, 1-0, even with reports of a manager and a star player in Papu Gomez not getting along, potentially maybe putting hands on one another. They all sucked it up and took care of business, and now we see what happens with this powder keg that is Atalanta. Yes. They move on to the knockout rounds. They needed that financially in a big way. Ajax squandered a big opportunity. They go into the Europa League.
No doubt. And we were looking at Team Chaos here in Group D and wondering how they would respond with all of the stories and all of the swirl. And they go in there, get the Duke, and finish second. And so, all right, you've made it. You've survived group stage. You're now in the knockouts. And I honestly, hand to heart, which I know makes a visual, and that's why I had to describe it as such, considering folks can't see me on the Twitch pitch. Hand to heart, I didn't think they were going to make it. I honestly did not, with everything that we've been talking about.
No, I didn't either. I did not either. The other groups, just as a reminder, Chelsea wins Group E, Sevilla second, Krasnodar into the Europa League. Group F, Dortmund wins it, Lazio second, Brugge into the Europa League. Go ahead and do it. I know you want to.
Brugge!
Group G, Juventus wins it, Barcelona second, Dinamo Kiev into the Europa. Group H, PSG won it, RB Leipzig second, not Red Bull Leipzig. That was said over and over and over and over again. It's not.
RB Leipzig.
Manchester United into the Europa League. Okay, we'll come back to the Europa League for a second. I'm going to ask you this, John. If you are a team who won the group and you're in pot 1, who do you want to draw the least out of the second-place teams? Atleti, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Porto, Atalanta, Sevilla, Lazio, Barcelona, RB Leipzig. Who scares you the most in that second group?
Atleti.
Why?
Just I know what the defensive structure that Simeone puts out there, and literally it's like staring at a team that to me runs like the veer or the triple option. It is you have to be focused the entire time for 90 minutes and try to you're beating your head against that defense every single moment, and it's that one slip up that will cost you against Diego Simeone. So for me, it is Atletico Madrid.
All right, let's flip it. If you're in that second group, who do you want out of the pot 1, the group winners? Bayern, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Borussia Dortmund, Juventus, PSG. Who do you want? Who's going to be the easiest to knock off?
Oh, easiest to knock off? Wow, that's a good one. I'm torn between Chelsea and Juve, so I'll go.
You have no respect for Chelsea?
I just don't defensively, no.
Jurgen Klopp said they were the most complete team in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, he also yells at VAR for 8 minutes and yells at schedule compression, so he likes to tilt at windmills, and so I'll go with either Chelsea or Juve. So for the sake of this, yes, I know they only gave up 2 goals in the group stage, but it was Sevilla, Krasnodar, and Rennes. I think that if you can get Chelsea stretched, you can get it done. So I'll go Chelsea 1, Juve 2.
I'm kind of thinking Real Madrid, which I know is craziness, but
yeah.
I think they're weak, and I don't think they're going to get better. I mean, they've got experience. They know how to handle some of these moments, but they haven't handled them very well consistently. So I might be tempted to go there.
I like that.
Last one on Champions League. Which matchup do you really, really want out of the possibilities between pot 1 and pot 2? And I don't think same country can be drawn against each other yet.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case here, so we'll leave that out. We'll leave like a Barcelona, Real Madrid. I might be wrong in that. But matchups you would like to see drawn.
Manchester City, Atleti.
Okay. That could actually be that's a good one. That's a really good shout. I will go with, I'm not even going to throw Barcelona into the mix because I just feel bad at this point.
Yeah.
I will go with Atalanta and Dortmund.
Yeah, that was Atalanta, and figuring out a number 1 side was going to be my second choice. But then I looked at Man City and Atleti, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, Atalanta and Dortmund or Atalanta and Chelsea I think Atalanta and Dortmund would be the true soccer hipster's dream matchup.
Right.
You know, if there is a latte or a cappuccino involved, maybe a beret. I mean, it is going to be total soccer hipster, 180 minutes of joy if it is Dortmund and Atalanta. And it'd be fun to watch for anybody. That should be good soccer.
No doubt.
All right, Europa League, we'll touch on it real quick because now that is completed as of today. I don't know if there were any just mind-blowing, crazy things. I didn't see what happened in terms of Young Boys in Cluj. Like
mind-blowing and crazy.
Well, mind-blowing and crazy in that match. I was talking more about like upsets or teams not getting through. Like what happened at the end of this Young Boys Cluj match?
Okay, so Cluj had the lead, which meant they would have gone through. Young Boys would not have. And so Young Boys get an equalizer off of a penalty, and the keeper got a red card.
What do you get the red card for?
It was, I'd love to know. I mean, it's.
So I'm looking at it right now. I'm not looking at the game. I'm looking at the score sheet, and there was a violent conduct red to Cluj in the 90th minute. There was a penalty in the 90+3, There was a red to Young Boys at 90 plus 5.
Right. That was Descent.
Okay. Then there was the winning goal from Young Boys at 90 plus 6.
Right.
And then another red for Cluj at 90 plus 8.
Yeah, Descent.
Goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, the end, basically, you end up with an equalizer. You end up with all those reds. You end up with chaos. The Cluj players are going after the official, and there was awful calls late. And it's like the crew just completely disintegrated in this. So it was pretty bad.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out. I'll have to watch those highlights. That might be a fun one to go back on.
Basically, you could take it from like the
84th is when the first goal, yeah.
And you're good.
Okay. Well, Young Boys ends up coming second in the group. Roma won it. Arsenal won their group. They beat Dundalk 4-2. Couple goals for Dundalk. They give up 19 in the group stage. Not really a shock. They were happy to be there. I think it's going to help the club kind of on solid footing. We'll hear from the Colonel on that one, I'm sure.
Yep.
But Arsenal wins the group. They were perfect in the Europa League. Molde second. Leverkusen and Slavia Prague go through in Group C in that order. Rangers won their group. Benfica was second. PSV won their group. Granada was second. Napoli ended up winning their group. They drew with Real Sociedad 1-1. And if you've not seen Lorenzo Insigne's Diego Maradona tattoo on his thigh, that's a lot of work on the man's thigh. Good grief. AZ went out. That was maybe a bit of a surprise. Yep. Leicester won their group. Braga second, same number of points. Milan won their group. Nick Khalifi is very, very happy with that. Lille came in second. Celtic actually won a match today over Lille. It didn't mean anything, but, good times. Villarreal, first in their group. Maccabi Tel Aviv, second. Tottenham won their group. They won today 2-0. Royal Antwerp lost to Tottenham, but came in second in the group. Dinamo Zagreb won their group. Wolfsberger of Austria came in second. That's a surprise. Feyenoord ended up not advancing. Hoffenheim won their group. Red Star Belgrade, second. You've got those teams from Champions League parachuting in. A lot of people have said Manchester United is the favorite or one of the favorites to win the Europa League. You buying it?
Tottenham.
Okay.
Manchester United. Milan. I don't think Leicester's got it. Leverkusen and Roma. That would be my top 6.
Yeah, I'm leaning Milan. Milan and Tottenham are the two for me. I think Manchester United can be in that conversation, but I'm leaning Milan and Tottenham as the ones. I think they're the strongest teams in the Europa League.
Right on.
All right, Bart is being dialed by Mateo. When he is on, you can go, John, and you can go now, John.
All right, see you in 20 minutes.
All right. John tags out. Bart Keeler tags in. What's going on, Bart?
I have been fuming all day at people who took way too much out of last night's U.S. men's national team match.
I don't blame you for that. I mean, El Salvador was bad.
They were bad. I don't know how much better they'll be if we have to see them in World Cup qualifying or a Gold Cup. But, yeah, they're not good. They played some interesting tactics. The United States looked pretty efficient for the first half. I don't know what more you want from it.
Yeah, so people are complaining. What are they complaining about? Because I don't know what there would be to complain about here.
So I think the overarching theme is you say, hey, we won 6-0, and they're like, well, it was just El Salvador. And my response would be, yeah, but that's what you should do against the El Salvador team.
Right.
I think the next comment would be, oh, well, it wasn't even El Salvador's A team. And my response again would be, this was not a U.S. men's A team, B team, possibly. It was probably a C team if you're being generous.
Yeah, that's probably generous to give them a C team. I mean, it's kind of a U23 plus team, sort of, because it was mostly U23s. I mean, the majority of the roster. Who stood out to you? I mean, Chris Mueller is the obvious answer. Did anybody else?
Yeah, so I think Chris Mueller needs to get an immediate transfer away from Orlando City. That may or may not have to do with the U.S. men's national team.
I'll leave that one alone for anybody listening in Central Florida.
Chris Mueller is he impressed. It wasn't just the 2 goals, but I think that's going to stand out to everyone because let's be honest, he's been on a tear this year. The numbers don't back up that he'll be able to consistently score the goals that he's scored during this calendar year, especially in MLS. But he clearly has been really productive, and he continued that again last night for Berhalter. And he really played the winger position the way that Berhalter wants the winger position played, and so did Areola on the opposite side. And those are, runs in behind, and that's something that is beneficial. And I think that he definitely played himself into at least you have to consider him for at least the Gold Cup next summer, if not, a bigger competition.
Let's get into Paul Areola for a minute. So I think when we've talked about depth chart and what the group could look like, we've left him out because he's been injured this season. He came back right at the end of the season for DC United. Played here, looked good. Definitely not 100% at the moment, but he's 25, and he came to DC with a lot of hype from Mexico. He had been part of the youth national teams prior to that. He's a guy that it seems like Berhalter does value. He's played as an outside back as well during his time at DC. Do you think he factors into the A group going forward? Does he have to earn that spot back?
Oh, that's tough because let me just kind of qualify all these comments because he did play well in this game. He did show well coming back from an ACL tear. But we don't know how he performed better in camp than other guys who hadn't been in camp before. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how he would look against direct competition especially where he plays, which would probably be one of 3, Christian Pulisic, Jordan Morris, and Gio Reyna.
Yep.
Does he maybe edge out Jordan Morris? Maybe. I think they're very similar players in that they're good running in behind and at people. I think Areola is a much more well-rounded player across the field. I don't think he beats out Pulisic. I don't think he could beat out Reyna when Reyna gets to fully integrated into the system. I think if you look at other young promising wingers, is he better than Uli Yanez? Is he better than, even in this game, is he better than a Chris Mueller at this point? I don't know. I don't think, he's in the depth chart because he is a guy who clearly has experience playing in CONCACAF, playing against CONCACAF teams. And to be quite honest, his time playing in Mexico is valuable for these types of scenarios. So I think he has to be considered, but it's really good. I don't know because I think that at this point in time, there's a lot of talent that's younger than he is. And we just haven't seen it enough to say that they're definitively better than Areola. But for me, Areola you have to do a lot to jump him in the depth chart. But if you do, that means you're a really good player. So if you're the U.S. fan, you're looking at it going, okay, if he's playing for us, it's not the end of the world. But there's room to grow above him.
So he's like the big boss at the end of a level on a video game, basically.
He's the boss at the end of a level, but not the biggest boss that you're going to play in that game.
There you go. That's probably Pulisic if we're going to go big bosses, or Reyna, or both of them, because they should be your starters if what we're thinking happens out.
In this conversation.
That's true. That's true. Maybe Areola becomes an overage possibility for the Olympics.
Hey, Jason, we have some breaking news, it looks like, for
hold on.
international soccer in this region.
Okay, you are going to break some news right now. Breaking news with Bart Keeler.
Reports say that CONCACAF will launch a Women's Nation League and Champions League.
Dig it. I'm very happy about this. This is a good thing because I think a lot of people got really bent out of shape in the wrong way when the World Cup expanded. And you saw some mismatches and you saw some games get a little sideways with the final score. But you can't expect teams that have never been there and never played serious competition to be ready for that. CONCACAF teams outside of the U.S. and Canada and to a lesser extent Mexico, and to a lesser extent Costa Rica, and now Jamaica's been to a World Cup.
And Panama.
Yeah, that's true. But even when you get past even Mexico, maybe, because they don't really get a lot of other games. The U.S. and Canada play a lot. U.S. plays a ton.
Yeah,
you can't get better if you don't play. And that Nations League was huge in CONCACAF, and maybe a bigger deal in CONCACAF than it was in UEFA for those smaller countries because they get competitive games to build and grow. I think for the women, it's going to have an even bigger impact.
Yeah, I think if you look at how it has helped, even in the first edition, the men's side, of just some of those middle group of teams improve their FIFA ranking a little bit and overall just get more competition, real competition to vet players, it's a positive. And you're right, like the United States and Canada, and I'll be quite honest, Canada's, they're looking up at a lot of people in the world right now.
Yep, they've
where
slipped.
they haven't been. And this, again, could help them because now instead of, a couple of friendlies a year, you're looking at serious competitive matches and probably some more matches against the United States in a competitive aspect, which is good for them. I really think this helps Mexico a lot, especially you look at the club competition. If they're having a Women's Champions League, well, Liga MX Femenil just started, this year? That's massive for them to be able to put a higher level of competition against NWSL teams and other, women's league teams in the region.
That's huge. And I think there's even some, very early rumors with talk on the men's side with teams playing in Libertadores. On the women's side, maybe some interaction with CONMEBOL. When I've seen Liga MX Femenil and even Argentina, whose league is starting to grow on the women's side, you see some incredibly technical, talented players. They're very different kinds of players than are produced here in the U.S. and in Canada. They struggle because they don't have the athleticism. And it feels like on the women's game, athleticism is still far more important than it is on the men's game. But getting games for the Mexican teams, I mean, there's some talent in Liga MX Femenil. And I think there's some teams in the NWSL that they can push. They can give them a tough contest.
Yeah, and I think, overall, this is just great to see investment into women's football. I think that's something that we've wanted. I don't know how many times I've tweeted in the past, 2 years about we need a U.S. Women's Open Cup.
Yep.
This is great to see because just increasing the overall level of competition will hopefully increase the overall level of competition for CONCACAF and women's soccer as a whole. And, it really for the United States, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. I'll be quite honest. Like, they're going to play these games. You see how they play in Olympic qualifying and World Cup qualifying. They haven't, other than the 2011 cycle, they haven't struggled in that at all. But this is good for the United States because this is an opportunity to try out new players.
Yep.
Give them some competition in a meaningful match. But at the end of the day, this is really helpful for, you mentioned Jamaica, Panama, Costa Rica, and Mexico, teams like that who they're, well, especially Jamaica, but whose confederations now are forced to kind of have to pony up a little bit and support the team because you have this official CONCACAF competition. It's not something that you can say, okay, here's a World Cup qualifying or Olympic qualifying, and we have a 2-week tournament. There you go. This is a much more time. A much longer period of time that you're going to have to commit to your team and giving them the resources to compete at a high level. And that is good for a country like Jamaica, for Panama, for Costa Rica, and others like that.
They'll have to budget more for the women's game in general because they're going to have more games. Through the cycle, through 24, they will more than double the number of official senior women's national team matches compared to the current cycle. That's huge. It's worth the investment. I think the investment will pay off. The game will grow. It's exciting to see. Karina LeBlanc, big part of this with as the head of women's football with CONCACAF. She hasn't been there very long, but we've already started to see some tangible things happening with the growth of the women's game across CONCACAF. And this is a great platform to continue to move forward with it. Let's get back to the game from last night a little bit because I want to get into a couple other players specifically and get your thoughts. Jackson Ewell, a player who we wondered why he wasn't on the initial list, wasn't a big deal. He ends up coming in. What did you think of him last night?
So I don't know if I can necessarily rate Jackson Ewell as like a player any higher after last night, but I will say his stock rose in terms of we learned last night that we can play Jackson Ewell at that holding midfield position against CONCACAF competition. And for him, that is good. And when you look at the United States as a whole, that's good because now you're not solely relying on having Tyler Adams there for every single game. I think that you learned that maybe not against Mexico, maybe not against Costa Rica, but El Salvador is the sixth highest ranked CONCACAF team right now. So they're pretty, and as much as people want to say, oh, we're going to have to go to Trinidad to start qualifying. No, we're probably going to El Salvador to start qualifying in September. They should be able to handle Trinidad. So if that's a typical, of a team that you'll see in qualifying and teams around them like you'll see in qualifying, I think he proved last night that he's capable of playing at that level, and that position and the way he plays that position can be utilized at CONCACAF competitions like that.
See, and that's a really good point because of the way the qualifying is going to go. I mean, just one, with the way the pandemic is affecting things, that first round of qualifiers, September, I mean, things should be much closer to normal by then, hopefully, if everything goes well with vaccines, but maybe not. You're going to be coming off of a summer after a crazy year. You're going to have players at clubs who maybe don't want to make that trip. You're going to have 3 games in that window, and you can't play the same group 3 games, I don't think. I think you'd be crazy to try it.
And I think to be quite pointed to the September window, you have games against a qualifier, 2 qualifiers, and Honduras. And one of those qualifiers might be Canada at Canada. So, Jackson Ewell being able to fill in against either the El Salvador or Trinidad team, being able to maybe fill in for the home leg against Honduras is massive. I mean, you don't know. That's a Berhalter decision, but he proved last night the position could be played there.
It opens up some possibilities because if Tyler Adams is not at 100%, let's say, and let's say his club is like, you know what, we have to let him go. We can't deny the call-up. We understand, but you need to be careful with him. We've heard this kind of language from clubs before, and these are games that are a little different, but maybe that's part of the deal is you say, okay, look, we understand what you're saying. We hear you. He's going to play one of the 3 games.
Yeah.
Not 2, not 3. He's going to play one, and he's going to play against Canada because we need him against Canada. We need our best choice. We've got Jackson Ewell. We've got a Paul Arriola. We've got some guys who can fill into these other games. Maybe the pool gets a little bit deeper with this qualifying format.
Well, I think that was the point of this friendly to begin with, is just to see if you could find any fish in this water. And I think, you found a couple. I think that you knew of a couple, but I think several of the guys made their case that they can be in the discussion for a full senior national team roster.
So Chris Mueller was a rather large fish. Jackson Ewell was a good-sized fish. Were there any other fish?
So I really liked Sam Vines last night. Really, really liked how he played. It wasn't the assist, but it was a key pass, I guess you would call it, to down the left side to Chris Mueller, who then crossed it to, I think Akinola was the intended target, but then Arriola slams it home for the goal. And that was a great pass from Sam Vines, and that's the type of pass that you're going to need when teams are possibly bunkering against you. El Salvador, it was a weird setup from El Salvador, but they weren't quite bunkering, but they also weren't pressing. It was a not ideal game plan. But Vines found a great pass in behind to a winger who's running in behind. This is the system, and you have 2 passes that lead to a goal, and that came from left back making a great little pass down the line. That's perfect. Sam Vines looked really good, defended pretty well, was just very well involved the entire match, and I think he really did himself some favors last night. And the other one is Sebastian Lletget. I mean, he just, again, proved that he's really darn good. I don't think that's a revelation, but, man, he's played in every single game this year, and it's hard outside of the Wales game where he didn't play well because it wasn't necessarily his best position, but he still did the job. He probably is the one who, if 2017 was the U.S. year of Jordan Morris, 2020 was the year of Sebastian Lletget for the men's national team.
Maybe he is the perfect overage player for the Olympics if you qualify. That might be a good reward for him?
I just don't know if you need an overage player for the Olympics, but you're right. I mean,
You'll
he's
take
at least
some for sure. I guess it just depends on what spots you need, but maybe you sometimes see that kind of as a reward for somebody. And I don't know how much Leggett factors in when everybody's at full strength. I don't know if I don't know. I guess he does. Berhalter really seems to like him, but you keep thinking he's going to get dropped, and he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have that much handsomeness on your team.
The boy, everybody likes the boy. So you had debuts last night from Araujo. You had Mueller, Akinola, Farfan, and Kyle Duncan making debuts. Got to be maybe one of the biggest games for debuts for the national team in recent years.
That I can remember, yeah. It was just, and it wasn't so. It was also like, it wasn't a Gio Reyna type of debut. It was like, okay, let's get this guy in type of a debut. It was like, oh, that's cool. I gotta be honest, Akinola wasn't as impressive as I think we wanted him to be.
Yeah.
But we scored 6 goals with him at striker, so it is what it is. He got a goal himself. It's unfair to make a huge. He did well. He played the position well. I'll say that much. He did the things that Berhalter likes from a striker, and he did them well. I don't think it necessarily suits his game that great because he's definitely a guy who would prefer to be running toward goal than linking up play in midfield, but he did it pretty well. I just wasn't. I was disappointed, especially when you didn't get to compare him to DK, which would have been a really cool comparison. Oh well. But, I mean, look, he needs another run out maybe, but it wasn't anything special. He didn't move himself up a depth chart, that's for sure.
Last one that we haven't talked about is Brendan Aronson. Some kind of mixed reviews. I think most people were pretty positive. Do you think he improved his stock here?
That's a tough question.
Not so much then.
So I think this is, for me, I think his stock improved because he definitely did not look out of place. I think if you were to compare how he looked in the February friendly to now, he has grown immensely, and I think that is the best. I mean, so I played soccer growing up. I also swam growing up, and oftentimes, actually all the time in swimming, you're competing against yourself, not someone else. So if you're Brendan Aronson, you go, hey, I bettered myself during this year, and that's a positive. I don't know if he replaces anyone on, in the starting 11 that Berhalter would prefer, but he's certainly made a case to be in the 23 for, an official competition. He's still growing, and I think that's the hard thing is he's really true. I mean, he's not at Gio Reyna's level in terms of like, oh, you're at a 75. He maybe is in the 60s, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have time to grow and evolve when he's at Salzburg, playing in a system that will push him to grow and evolve. And I think he did fine. I have nothing to complain about with him. I would have preferred to maybe get involved more on some goals, but he was pretty involved on goals. So it's hard to truly give him a great, rousing review, but he didn't do anything bad. So can't say anything. I don't think you can say anything bad about the kid's performance last night.
All right, let's finish up with this. U.S. Soccer announced the nominees for Young Male Player of the Year and Male Player of the Year yesterday. I don't think you have an official vote, but we're going to give you one on SDH, and we're going to see what you think. So Young Male Player of the Year, Aronson, McKenzie, Yunus Musa, Gio Reyna, Chris Richards. Who gets your vote?
Well, so I don't know if we make Yunus Musa the Young Player of the Year, if he automatically is cap tied or not, but that would be kind of cool. I think you have to give it to Gio Reyna because sometimes, I mean, we played 4 games this year. It's hard to evaluate from a U.S. men's, like, who played well for us in this year. Like, no one played, so it's kind of hard to give him that. He looked fine in the 2 games he did play, but he has had a fantastic year for club and a pretty good year for country. I would give it to Gio Reyna. Just turned 18, got that big contract with Dortmund, and has been he has proven himself to be always in the matchday roster for Dortmund, and I think that's enough to give him Young Player of the Year, in my opinion.
I'm okay with that. And Player of the Year nominees, Tyler Adams, Serginho Dest, Weston McKennie, Jordan Morris, Christian Pulisic, Jossie Zardes. Who gets your vote?
Weston McKennie.
I like
Man, I think the Weston McKennie, I think a lot of people doubted him. Not him, doubted his move to Juve. And I won't say unrightfully so. I mean, I think it's a big jump to go from Schalke to Juve, especially where Schalke was. But man, he has proven to be quite fitting for Juventus and has performed well in every competition they've played in. The only other one I could consider is Dest, because he had a very similar, like, he's going to Barcelona. Both clubs aren't necessarily at their highest peak right now, but both players are playing really well. But for me, it's Weston McKennie. He proved in that camp in November that he really is the driving force of this men's national team going forward, and I think you got to give it to him for this year. I really do.
The reporting out of Goal.com today is that Juventus have already started talking about paying the transfer fee, 18.5 million euro. They want to pay it over 3 years to buy him outright. They're already on board. Maybe that Champions League goal had a little something to do with it.
It was beautiful. And for him, you hope that he stays there because it's good for him. It's good for us, but it's ultimately good for Weston McKennie. And you have to be proud of how he's progressed really over the past 3 years.
So what do we have to look forward to in U.S. national team things over the next couple of months? Anything on board yet or anything you're expecting?
So I don't know where I heard this from, and I cannot say with any confidence, but a possible game with Canada for the January friendly window. I don't know how much truth there is, but it makes sense. It's always it's mostly always a CONCACAF team. Canada would obviously be in the same boat that we are, where their domestic league hasn't started yet. They clearly have a lot of people in MLS as well, and probably will also have a camp similar to ours in January. I think they've done that before. But we will probably have the January camp and a friendly coming up. And then in March, we will start with friendlies and possibly Olympic qualifying for the U23s. That is still to be determined from CONCACAF. They got to get it in somewhere, and that's got to be it. That's really it. That's the only thing we have really to look forward to from the men's national team front. It will be interesting to see what evolves, but as of right now, I think you can plan on the January camp, and then you definitely have March friendlies. We just don't know what those are going to be yet.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to the January camp, where you basically take maybe the players who did really well here in this camp and add in guys who weren't available, maybe like a Miles Robinson, a George Bello, a Brooks Lennon, guys of that ilk, and maybe it becomes, like we talked about before, that pre-Olympic kind of determination.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the plan for January. I think that was even the plan this past January of just vetting those guys, getting them all together, because if they're all together learning the system, they'll be able to take it back and learn it and practice it in their own team. It should be the best of the MLS players that we have to offer, and maybe some Euro guys who aren't playing with their teams yet, but it's probably, I'm with you, it's going to be a pivotal camp to show where we actually stand from a talent level for our talent pool. I'm excited.
Well, we'll get you back on before that to kind of talk through what we think the roster could be. Once we kind of know what the timeline's going to be, we'll talk about that here coming up. But thanks for jumping on kind of last-minute notice today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm working on a story right now that's kind of a course evaluation of CONCACAF 101 because I feel like that's a great way to put what we just saw last night and see who passed and who failed.
Let everybody know where they can follow you and find your hot soccer takes.
Bartimus Prime 19 on Twitter. Sometimes hot soccer takes, sometimes just a lot of hype. I think I screamed on Twitter when McKennie scored his goal on Wednesday. I was like,
you were not alone.
I wasn't the only one. Bartimus Prime 19 on Twitter. Appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bart. All right, Bart tags back out, and now John tags back in. What's up? How'd it go with Canada?
Came and went, and usually the way it ends up is that Ryan and I talk rapid fire, and he ends up every single segment by trying to find the most obscure sport on the planet to get my opinion of it and whether or not I would participate.
And what sport was it this time?
Canal vaulting out of Europe. Netherlands.
I'm not vaulting over a canal.
But apparently in the Netherlands, they do this because of the lack of crossing points in cities where there aren't really enough bridges and things like that. And so in the old days, apparently, they grabbed pole vaults and made them of longer distances than what we're used to seeing in U.S. track and field. And then they would just run up to the canal, and the pole goes into the water, and you vault from one end of the canal to the other. And I told Ryan there was no way in hell I would ever do something like that.
Nuh-uh. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's about right.
Nuh-uh. All right. J-Dub Parker would like to watch you vault over a canal, though.
Yeah, he's going to be watching for a long time for something to happen.
You're not making it over that canal, man.
Not a chance.
It's going to end badly.
I'm getting an Uber.
Yes, yeah, go around the canal. It's a better way to do it. All right, we got some different bits of news and rumor and innuendo and things going on around the soccer world. We'll get you caught up on that. Couple things this evening, if you were looking for games to watch. Right now, you have Lanús and Independiente in the 76th minute in Copa Sudamericana. It is scoreless in the first leg of I believe we're in the round of 16 in the Sudamericana. River Plate and Nacional in the first leg of the Copa Libertadores quarterfinal is at 7:30. That could be a very intense matchup. River has not looked all that commanding in the Libertadores since the restart. We'll see if they kind of pick things up a notch. Last night, the Boca Internacional second leg, which we kind of dismissed because Boca won the first leg on the road. You think they're going to come back to La Bombonera, take care of business, go through easily. Nah, they had to go to penalties. They had an own goal. They go to penalties. I am not alone in thinking this. I saw it a whole lot on Argentine Twitter last night. There were ghosts involved in helping Boca penalties find the back of the net. There were a couple that had no business being scored. Carlos Tevez with an awful penalty that the goalkeeper tries to save, should have saved. It gets in, and Tevez looked like he was looking around for the ghost. And then Izquierdos, his penalty goes off the crossbar down. I think it might have come out and not gone in, but the way it spun off the post and in. It's one of the more bizarre penalties I've seen. It finds the back of the net. An 18-year-old kid for Internacional, once you went to bonus penalties, puts it over the bar, and Boca survived, and it felt like they survived. That was a pretty surprising performance from Boca in a big match. We'll see if River can do better tonight. That's 7:30, but then at 10 o'clock, you have Pumas hosting León in the first leg of the Apertura Liga MX final. Pumas hosting León, what do you think on that one, John? You are the Liga MX expert.
I've got to go with León, one of the hottest teams right now. And
on the
juice
road.
Boxes, juice boxes agree. I don't think it's going to be a blowout city or anything. It might be. I think it's going to be a very tight, something 1-0, 2-1, something like that. Club León right now a -104. Pumas at home a +280, and your draws a +245.
So this is critical for Pumas to have a good performance and win. You know, you're in that boat where you're the underdog in the series. You get the home leg first. You got to win by a couple of goals.
Yeah.
We'll see if they can keep the momentum going from what they did against Cruz Azul.
Yeah. And to your other juice box coming up at 7:30,
yes.
River's a big favorite, -325 against Nacional. Nacional, basically a +945, and your draw is north of +400.
I don't hate the draw. River's not been all that convincing for me. I don't hate that draw at all in that one. If you're looking for some silly juice boxes to throw around, that might be the one. If you're looking for more, we mentioned Pumas and momentum. If you're looking for more on what happened to Cruz Azul, there's a good piece over at FMF State of Mind for a further definition of what it means to Cruz Azulear, which is now a verb, which is synonymous with losing against all odds. They go into detail about the curse and about all of it. So if you heard about it and you're like, that can't be that big of a deal, it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It is definitely that big of a deal. So FMF State of Mind. It is the El Tree and Liga MX site on the SB Nation platform. Badgers putting the Hanukkah Gelt on Pumas tonight.
Okay.
That's bold. I'm going.
I'm watching it. I'm not touching it. I'm watching it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can go there, Badger. I don't think I can do it. Update on River lineup tonight. Winter Wind says a bit of a curve from Marcelo Gallardo. Rojas and Angelieri start. Pinola and Casco don't. It's tough for the Argentine teams with the way their current domestic competition set up. They went into match day 6 of the Copa Diego Armando Maradona over the weekend. I think River had already clinched. They were through going into the championship round that's coming up next, where they'll play 5 more games. Believe they rested a bunch of guys. So it's this weird thing where they've played 6 games domestically. Some of them have played far more internationally, and getting a rhythm and maintaining a rhythm while also maintaining fitness levels has been a little awkward for a few teams. There's been some weird results both domestically, where Defensa y Justicia, for example, who won in Sudamericana in Brazil and Bahia last night, big win for Defensa. They really struggled to maintain that in the domestic play, and they went into basically the consolation cup of the tournament. They didn't make it in the top 2 of their 4-team group. But internationally, they were very close to advancing in the Libertadores. They go into the Sudamericana, and they keep winning and getting a win on the road in the first leg. They're in a great spot to come back home for the second leg. Lots of the kind of odds and ends tonight, because I think night shows are a little strange, because I kind of have an expectation that to some degree you guys have heard all of this. So it's like we don't want to just repeat the news like we do in the morning show at times, where it is a little bit more of a what you might have missed or what's coming up the rest of the day. So we're kind of all over the place. Mentioned the McKennie update, where it looks like Juve is going to get him on a permanent. Tim Weah with a nice goal for Lille today. Richie Ledesma on the national team front. It didn't look good with his injury for PSV, and his manager has come out. There's been some quotes I've seen where he wasn't too optimistic about it either. Didn't look like there was any contact, and it looked badly.
Yeah, and having to be stretchered off in the 20th minute in a game, and from everything that I've seen, it was no contact. It was plant and just hoping for the best. And I know that these initial hours and days are scary for anybody who has any kind of an injury or anyone attached to it. So just looking forward to seeing good news when it comes to Richie Ledesma, but we'll see what lays out.
So take this stuff with a grain of salt. We've had a couple of questions. Handu and Ricky Ricardo both threw this into the Twitch pitch, and I wanted to see what else was there. David Medrano Felix. He is with TV Azteca. He is legit, absolutely legit. Almost 577,000 followers on Twitter. Again, that doesn't mean he is the greatest. It means he has a lot of followers, which means people pay attention to what he has to say. He's written for Record in Mexico as well. He tweeted this morning, approval. This is translated. The North American League project already has the approval of FIFA and CONCACAF. MLS and Liga MX are working on the regulations. Now, let's work backwards. This has come up before about a merged league, combined league, MLS and Liga MX working together. Both sides have talked about working together. They were going to play an all-star game this summer. You have a Leagues Cup between the two. You have more cooperation than ever before between Major League Soccer and Liga MX. Now you have Bonilla, the former president of Liga MX, stepping down. Now he is heading up some kind of international projects division. He talked about working more with MLS. Didn't really go into detail here, although these rumors were coming up when it was announced that he was stepping down. This is the first time I've seen anything about any kind of approval process. That's new.
Yeah.
Now, this would be, it sounds like, very different than what we currently have with approvals for situations like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver playing in Major League Soccer. They're the same country, but they're different members of FIFA, like Cardiff, like Swansea, playing in England, Wrexham. I think there's probably a few others. That's different where it's like one team here, one team there. This is a league spanning two borders. And I know you have members in leagues. I get that. But this is different. This is a combined league. This is not one member of FIFA having a league and having some guest teams. This is a combined league, we think, from the way it's being talked about. Felix is reporting that FIFA and CONCACAF have approved it. Now, I'm surprised on the CONCACAF side because CONCACAF has to be, I would think, not happy about this because this would potentially take away from the CONCACAF Champions League.
Right.
If it is more along the lines of what we thought it would be, and that would be maintaining the domestic leagues and this being an increased competition between the two. This makes me think they are talking much bigger than that. Now, look, I know a lot of people point to, and MLS Buzz, who has shared some of this, has shared, and this is what people point to. Liga MX owns 9 of the 10 most-watched soccer games in the USA in 2020 on TV. MLS needs that. Yes, they do. Liga MX is a giant soccer nation that punches below their weight and don't make as much money as they could. MLS would help with that. I think that's a little bit overstated. Liga MX wants to do more business in the United States because they're making money in the United States. Yes. They'd like to make more money in the United States. Everybody is looking to make money coming out of a pandemic, period. That's a must because you're hearing it from anybody who is talking about sports business right now. It can be the NBA where they sold shares in some really weird scheme to get $30 million to every team in the league. And they're going to have to pay. It feels like they're almost selling shares and then they're creating the calendar to buy them back. And the longer they wait, the more interest they're going to pay to buy them back. So they had to get cash. They had to get capital. The NBA, which is big. Don Garber said, we can't do that. We're not in a position to be able to do that. Don Garber also said they're looking at losing $1 billion this year, and it might end up being worse than that when you take all of the increased expenses into account. You're also hearing from the MLSPA head, Bob Foose, today saying, don't threaten us with the force majeure clause because we gave you back 5% of our pay, and this is coming from the players, and you can't ask us for more, which I think is a little bit of an odd statement when you look at some other clubs around the world that are either not making their payroll, Barcelona, or giving back more money from their players, Barcelona, and still can't make their payroll. Yes, there was some kind of friction between the league and the PA going into the change of the CBA during the pandemic because the one they had agreed on hadn't been ratified. Things dramatically changed, et cetera, et cetera. There's a relationship that needs to be rebuilt there. They all need to sit down and do it instead of having press conferences where they're sniping at one another. That's not going to accomplish a thing right now, and I'm really frustrated with it because it doesn't help anything to say we don't want to start in March. The league's been starting in March. We need more time off. Well, this is about the amount of time you've had off. If you need another week because of the teams that are playing in CONCACAF, that's fine because it's about a week later than the MLS Cup was normally. Okay, fine. You can adjust that. If it needs to start a little bit later, that's fine. But now it's like talking about spring, summer. It's getting a little much on that side because the flip side is what the league is dealing with. They cut 20% of their workforce. They don't do that unless they have to. You've got clubs that there are moves that have been made that you're kind of looking at and wondering if these are financially motivated. Mauro Manotas was sold for not a great amount of money. It looks like it could be about $4 million plus sell-ons. They could have made more before. They didn't really have any time to hold on and see if they could have made more now. They had to take what they could get. The Brian Schmetzer situation, we'll see how that plays out. I would assume Seattle doesn't feel comfortable giving him a giant raise because they lost a lot of money this year. These are things that are difficult, and the sniping in press conferences does not help. The players have given a lot, and Foose talked about it. He said 20% of the players tested positive for COVID over the course of 2020. The league didn't have to report all of the positive tests. The numbers, I don't know if anybody's run them yet. That doesn't necessarily match up. From my experience with games and not seeing players that we expected to see in games, that we did not know why. There wasn't a huge number of that, at least in our case. And maybe that's just a fluky thing. It's totally anecdotal. I don't remember a lot of unexplained absences that you would think could have been COVID, but it wasn't announced as such. Okay, 20% also, does that include players who tested positive before the return to play? Does that include players who tested positive on international duty that had nothing to do with MLS? We don't know. The players have risked and given a lot to play this season, 100%. The players have had to, in a lot of ways, deal with a life that is different than normal, like all of us have. But yes, they've done that and they've played. That deserves a ton of consideration. I'm surprised at how hostile things came off today with the statement when I don't think it needed to be. Now the MLS Liga MX conversation is really fascinating because, one, you're going to have a lot of other conversations that are going to have to be had off of this. How big is this league? Is it two divisions? Is it going to be a certain number of MLS teams and a certain number of Mexican teams in the first division? Is it going to be a crapshoot? I mean, like, what? How? Huh? Cap? No cap? Like, what? You could go so many different directions with this thing. Is it a true combined league, or is it a additional competition to domestic play? Tons of questions. We don't know, and I don't think we're going to know anytime soon. What we do know, hold on. What we do know is you have two leagues that are both growing. MLS obviously has been growing before the pandemic. Liga MX has been growing before the pandemic. They've been growing in different ways. Both now need help to continue to grow and honestly to get back to where they were before the pandemic. Both need to work together to make money. This is a way to do that. I am very intrigued as to what this could look like and what kind of timeline we're talking about. I don't think it happens next year. That's way too fast. I don't know how that could happen. Liga MX has already set dates for their spring tournament. MLS has said what they want to do. They haven't set dates for it yet. I think 2022 at the earliest, and it might honestly be working towards something in like 24, 25, 26 down the line. Because if it is a true combined league, and we're totally in fantasy land right now, then you've got to figure out a way to determine who is in the top flight of it, unless it is everybody and it's just going to be a free-for-all, and you're going to play some kind of regional schedule, and you figure that out and tell me what it looks like. I would assume there'd be two divisions to it, and you've got to determine who goes where, and that's going to be a process, and there's going to have to be everything very clearly spelled out. It feels like Fantasyland. It doesn't feel real. This is a different kind of report than the leagues are talking. The leagues want to merge. The leagues want to do this. When you start talking about approvals, that feels like it's more concrete than just a theory. Is it? We'll have to wait and see. But it feels like maybe this is a little something to this.
The first date that popped into my head as you were talking it through was the beginning of the new media deal. Was that 23?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the better way to put it is the current one expires at the end of 22.
Okay, yeah. So as a part of whatever you would want this to look like, if this new league notion, if it was part of the discussion heading into a new media deal after the end of the 2022 season, and if it's 2023 or 2024, as a part of this package, you would be getting MLS sides, playing Liga MX sides in whatever form and fashion this is going to be for this new idea that we're talking about. But the first date that stuck in my head as you were talking it through was as a part of rolling out this competition, you have this hemispheric media deal and media partners across the board where everyone can have this opportunity to make more revenue in a bunch of different ways, possibly streaming, 3 dimensions, whatever, than you're having it right now. Each league gets to sit there and have their reach go into each other's country. And you have that chance to sit there and grow your audiences across country borders. And so, I mean, for me, like I said, that was the first thing that stuck in my head.
Well, I mean, that's already happening, though, with the ratings here for Liga MX. And not every Liga MX game draws 1.9 million or 2.5 million. Let's be real. There's some that don't draw the same as others, just like there's some MLS games that draw better than others. That's the nature of it. You take best game against best game, there's a gap, and MLS needs to work to close that. Liga MX, do they grow on TV because of this? I don't think so. Does this raise up the average viewer number for Atlanta United, for LAFC, for the teams that are kind of driving those bigger numbers for MLS? Maybe. I mean, if you have a league match between Atlanta and Chivas or LAFC and Club America, then yeah, those heavyweight games are going to draw that. Is it going to draw it across the board enough? Is it going to increase the combined numbers enough? That's the intriguing part for me, because it's not literally just add one, boom, look what happens. No, I think it's a lot of the same people. So does it grow the top end of a, quarterfinal or semifinal in this case rating for Liga MX? Does it grow that from 1.9 to something else because people in Minnesota, people in Columbus, Ohio are watching it because it's part of the same league? Do you get new viewers?
Right.
Does it grow the viewers for the MLS side? That's a question. What do the logistics look like? I mean, there are a lot of questions. And Handu asked, he said, does a merger concern you? And I said, yeah, because of the unknowns around it. It's never been done in this way. Like, there's not anything to draw on. There's some real serious questions about logistics.
Yes.
There's serious questions about, what the sustainability is of it, because, in Mexico, for example, you've got your heavyweight teams that drive the conversation. And then you've got the Veracruz situation from last year. You've got teams that are struggling. Are they going to be able to keep up? Are the smaller MLS teams going to be able to keep up? Or are they more stable than the smaller Mexican teams? Does everybody grow, or does it just serve the top? And I don't know what the intention is. I mean, maybe it is to grow the top of it. And if you have a combined league that features Chivas, Club America, Pumas, Cruz Azul, just the top 4 that we've seen here lately in Liga MX, León, Santos, Monterrey, Tigres. Okay? You include those 8, the top 8 markets teams, valuable teams in Mexico, and you throw in your New York market, you throw in Miami, you throw in Atlanta, you throw in your Los Angeles teams, you throw in your Seattles and your Portlands and your Torontos and your Montreals. It gets interesting. And I think where maybe my biggest concern is, okay, that part makes total sense. You have 20 teams that are the biggest between the two leagues. I'm all over it. I'm very excited about every match day. I'm very excited about almost every matchup. What about the others? What about Colorado and Atlas? What about Xolos and Houston? What about some of those that it's kind of like, does this move the needle? Does it help them to be in this, or does it make it harder for them to compete? And I don't have the answer. I don't know. We're dealing in hypotheticals right now.
Right.
But it's a interesting, I think, experiment to look at, to talk about, to try to figure out what it could do. And it does feel like fantasy football to a degree. It feels like a video game that you're putting together with what you could re-envision this to look like. And, you know, we talked about it today on 92.9 talking about college football. There's the potential, and I'm surprised college football didn't take more advantage of it this year because of the craziness. It's probably just down to the fact you don't really have a commissioner or czar or anybody making these decisions across all of college football. But you're going to see things dramatically change. Some formats are going to change because of what has happened with the pandemic. How big is that change? Is that change going to be big enough to see MLS and Liga MX, two leagues that were growing pre-pandemic, combine forces and do something that we have never seen in the world in this sport and grow both to a level that we didn't expect and become the league of choice in this hemisphere and become a top 6 league in the world? I mean, is that what we're potentially talking about here? Or is it a wild experiment that not everybody's on the same page and it doesn't work? I don't know.
I mean, you're talking about 48 teams, and there are a couple of things involving Liga MX that are concerns to me.
Like what?
Budgets, salary. If this was to come together in fantasy football land, what's your budgets? Is there a cap?
Well, hold on. There's two different things. Like salary cap, yes, I think that's going to have to be a conversation. MLS has functioned with one. Liga MX has not. Do you have one or do you not? My guess is you would have some semblance of a cap. Maybe it is far more of a soft cap. I don't know. I don't think the MLS teams would necessarily want to operate without it because it has ensured stability. I think the Mexican teams might look towards it and say that's actually a pretty good idea because we've seen some things get a little crazy in our league.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go soft cap, that's fine. The budget side, I don't think that's an issue because I don't think there's many Mexican teams that are just under budgeted.
Well, and if I remember correctly, in the current setup of Liga MX, if you finish, I think it's lower, if you're one of the 4 lowest teams in the table, you have to pay a financial penalty back to the league instead of having the promotion and relegation aspect of it that they've had in years past. To lock in this group of teams over the next handful of years, you paid a financial penalty back to the league for finishing bottom 4.
That might have been the negotiation about it. That sounds familiar. I don't remember the details on it. They suspended promotion relegation with the Ascenso. You didn't really have many teams in the Ascenso who were maybe completely capitalized to be able to move up. Leones Negros was one.
Right.
That might be about it. There just not many actually met the standards for it. So what you often saw was a team, in air quotes, would get promoted, and then that spot would get bought by one of the teams that was getting relegated, and you might see a minor name change. And I mean, Jaguares and Chiapas, and it was Jaguares de Chiapas, and it was Chiapas FC with the Jaguar logo. I mean, it went round and round and round for a while. The promotion relegation system in Mexico was kind of a joke to begin with, but now they stopped it for a while. And I do think there's some kind of financial thing there if you finish where you could have got relegated. But it's not in each season. Remember, they did like Promedios like they do in Argentina, where it was over a 3-year period to try to protect the bigger teams.
And just the imbalance of the number of franchises in each league, because you're talking about 18 versus soon to be 30. Is it all 48? Do you have divisions 24 and 24? With the who goes where, and are owners going to dig being placed in if there's a second division? If there's an MLS owner, I want to be in the second division of this. I mean, I would think that some owners would balk at that notion.
So, all right, and this is completely off the top of that. You mentioned TV before, and I didn't completely finish where I was going to go with it. I got sidetracked. Mexico does their TV team by team. You basically sell your home games. So TUDN has the bulk of them, but ESPN, Deportes in the U.S. has some. I think they still have some. They might have actually lost them. Okay. Fox has a few, and Fox has been growing in this area. NBC via Telemundo had Chivas because their internal over-the-top network didn't happen very well. So it's all kind of a mishmash, and I don't know what long-term kind of deals they have. They're going to have to figure out those cycles, and they're going to have to do essentially what MLS has done and say no deals past a certain date, so then you can get everything in alignment. The good thing is, I mean, TUDN, Fox, ESPN, all partners with MLS from broadcasting today, probably will continue going forward. So you have a lot of synergy already in place. You have a lot of potential crossover already in place. 48 teams, and again, this is off the top of the head. I think you're going to struggle to get into a second division situation at the very beginning. You're either going to have to do that with some ideas of what domestic play looks like over the preceding years before you fully launch the merged league, or you just say 48 teams. You're going to play a certain number of games in your season. Is it going to be Clausura Apertura-like? Is it going to be one calendar year like MLS does? Which way is it going to slant? Is it going to slant more towards an MLS model or towards a Liga MX model? My guess is more towards an MLS model. That's my guess. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the Mexican teams really get hung up on that. I think it would lean that way. I would be completely fine if it didn't. I'd be fine if it was an Apertura Clausura kind of model. I think that's harder with a large number of teams, though. So we'll see what that looks like. 48 teams, you could divide it into, what are we doing? 4 groups?
224s?
2 groups of 24 or 4 groups of 12. For scheduling purposes, to try to balance things out, you probably wouldn't have regular cross-country travel, which in some ways is good, but you would want certain matchups, so you'd have to create some kind of hybrid where you play the teams closest to you, home and away, but you want New York City Club America or New York City or Chivas, and maybe you have like kind of a rotating non-conference or non-regional or whatever you want to call these things kind of situation, because you want those games. You want Miami, Atlanta, New York, the LAs, the Seattles, Toronto wants in on this. You want them to have those games with the big teams, but you've got to divvy them up because you can't just have Club America play heavyweights. They need to play Colorado. They need to play, Kansas City. The scheduling's up just craziness. I don't know. I don't know what you do with it. If you go all in, or if you do 2 divisions, then you've got to change the way MLS is structured. You've got to do that anyway, I guess, in terms of the buy-in. I don't know what kind of leeway the board and Don Garber have to make these kinds of dramatic changes. We are seriously talking Fantasyland. That's basically where we're at with this. Could it make sense? Yes, because it could be very lucrative, and that is going to be a massive consideration. Could it help with both leagues or a combined league playing in CONMEBOL competitions? Potentially. CONCACAF would probably have to sign off on that. That could be interesting. Would it change anything with a CONCACAF Champions League? No, just more so how teams qualify. There's a lot of good in it. There's a lot of confusing things in how you could make it work in it, too. Would it be too risky? I think you'd create a structure that would protect yourself from that. Is there potential for growth? Yes, in Spanish language media. Absolutely. That's massive. Would Liga MX grow in English language media because of this? Yes, Mexican clubs would, because they'd be talked about in the same breath with the MLS teams that, to be honest, aren't talked about enough in English language media. So how much of a bump would they get there? Would having the Mexican big teams involved change the way a SportsCenter, a New York Times, a Washington Post look at soccer in this country? I don't really know the answer to that. It'd be a very interesting experiment, but it'd also be a very risky, potentially expensive experiment.
Yes.
That's the things about it. There's as many unknowns as there are potential good things that people will point out. So I'd love to see what a model would look like. I'd love to see what a sketch of this could look like. It's really interesting. I would have thought maybe a European Super League would have happened first before this, but maybe this is kind of the first step towards something like that is outside the box for FIFA, for soccer in the world, and could lead to, Belgium and the Netherlands have talked about combining their leagues. There's been talk about, I think, a combined Scandinavian league at one point. It's come up at different points. And not just like Celtic and Rangers coming into play in England. That's been talked about too. But more of a combined league structure, and this discussion about an approval process, maybe it's further along than we would think.
Would you like for me to thank somebody?
Yes, I would. Why don't you thank our good friend Steve Apolinsky over in Decatur, GA?
I could do that. Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, one phone call is all that you need to do, or an email, or going to a homepage. How do you perform each of these functions? Well, here's how. You can get a free consultation by using the phone. Call 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email, steve@aa-legal.com, or you can go onto the World Wide Web, large device or small. You type in aa-legal.com, you hit enter, you hit return, you hit the arrow key, whichever function moves you to a home page. You get a pop-up window, because pop-up windows, that's what they do. That's why they're called pop-up windows. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, it is Apolinsky & Associates, LLC. The website is aa-legal.com.
You were very fast on the PM edition.
I was. I cannot explain why. I was just thinking that I was hitting it in line with the musical stanzas, and I was too fast waiting for the murder she wrote element of the promo.
Yes, you were very fast. Okay, updates, and I can't believe we're an hour and 24 minutes in, and we haven't mentioned Gabriel Heinze just yet. That was, I don't know if developed is the right way to put it. Last 95% night,
95% developed.
Well, I mean, yeah, but what does that mean, really? Cesar Luis Merlo teased it first on the Twitters, told you to go to his Instagram, to go to his stories. Then it wasn't at the time he said it was going to be, but he shared a picture that had Atlanta United and Gabriel Heinze, a logo for Atlanta United in it, and 95%, and he said very, very, very close. Okay. Is that more than it was before? Is that less? Is it just still waiting? I don't know. I don't know what this means. And the reason why I think that 5% that Merlo is leaving out is important is the fact that now you are hearing something that I don't necessarily think there's a lot to it, but it is getting a lot of noise. Okay. Carlos Queiroz is gone from Colombia. He is not the national team manager anymore. The Chilean national team manager, Reynaldo Rueda, going to head to Colombia. That's what it looks like. That's how should be happening. So that means Chile is open. Gabriel Heinze's name has come up with Chile, and to the point that it has been reported in Chile that he has been contacted by the Chilean Federation. I don't know if he's interested in a national team job. It'd be very different. I'm not sure if that's where his head is or not. But that has come up. Every Brazilian club is probably looking at potentially firing their manager. And his name comes up a lot among fans. It hasn't come up with any concrete rumors since the Palmeiras job. But until he is contracted somewhere, his name is going to come up everywhere. With Chile, Ariel Holan, formerly of Independiente, name has come up. Nestor Peckerman, name has come up as well. People are trying to figure out who would be realistic, who could be next, what could this look like. It's a very interesting situation because the longer he is out there, it feels a little Pochettino-esque, right? Where any job that opens up, he's going to be the first name to talk to if you're in South America. If it is a Brazilian club, big club, he's the Pochettino right now in South America. If it's Chile, a national team spot, if that comes up, his name is going to come up and potentially be contacted. And there is reporting that he has been contacted. Not just he's a candidate, not just he's on a wish list, but he has been contacted by the Chilean Federation. So that's out there. Just checking right now, TVN in Chile, one of the national TV networks, they have not defined the departure yet of Rueda to Colombia. So they can't really define a hiring process for the replacement when the job isn't open yet. So that's going to complicate it. Colombia is trying to get the deal done with Rueda. If Rueda goes, Jose Peckerman, Ariel Holan, Gabriel Heinze, and TVN reported that Heinze's name was added to the list. El Mercurio has said that, and this is translated, Heinze is one of the technicians who, although in Quilin they are in charge of clarifying that they will not deepen contacts with potential replacements until the future of Reynaldo Rueda is settled. So he's somebody that the Federation likes, but again, the job isn't actually open yet. They talk a little bit about Heinze, and they pull a quote from him from mid-January. He said, I had coaches who have marked things for me the way I feel about football. I was with Bielsa, with Luis Enrique, who is one of the most valuable types of football. I have the privilege that when I need them or when I call, they attend to my phone call. When time passes and they answer the phone with kindness, you realize the path you made as a person in addition to being a recognized footballer. So I guess that was an important thing for Chile to say, that he's connected, and the Bielsa connection is very important in Chile. Very, very important. That's why his name would come up. You know, we've talked about it before about Heinze. It has been said that he is the most Bielsa-like of anybody who follows Bielsa out there. Chile had great success with Marcelo Bielsa and then with Jorge Sampaoli. So it would make sense that you would go down that style again with a Gabriel Heinze. Would he be interested in going national team job as opposed to club job right now? I'm guessing the financials would be an element to that, and I'm guessing his ambition would be an element to that too.
Yeah, El Mataflow has dropped a haiku into the timeline regarding Heinze.
It was from earlier, right?
No, an hour ago.
Okay.
The search continues, and it is 575. I actually had to do the research about haikus just to make sure it fit. 575. The search continues. Heinze seems to be closer. The fans are restless. Hashtag Thursday Thoughts.
The restless thing. Tranquilo. I mean, there's only so much you can do here. Pablo Rubio, who is out of Rosario and covers Newell's Old Boys to a large extent. I've followed Pablo's stuff for a while when there's been the connections first with Franco Escobar. And then the guy, remember Brian Gambarte, who came and trained with Atlanta United 2, played with the academy a little bit. So there's been some connections there. Pablo Rubio tweeted at 1:20 today, said only details remain for Gabriel Heinze to be the new coach of Atlanta United. Next week, he would sign the contract. That's the first I've seen of that. And Pablo's legit. He has connections, at least with Newell's, and I would assume he would have connections in some form or fashion to Heinze. So that's the only other real follow-up advancement I have seen on the Heinze rumor today. There hasn't been anything else. I mean, I'm double checking as we speak, and it is a lot about Chile being interested, Chile waiting to contact him, Chile trying to get things finalized with Rueda leaving and what that looks like. Will Heinze wait to hear Chile out, or will he want to do a club job, or is that 5%? Maybe bigger than 5% in the rumor exchange rate between the United States and Argentina? I don't know.
Yeah, and
still a better life than DC.
Wow. Okay. Well, why that slander? Where'd that come from, Jarrett?
Well, I just like Atlanta's position better as far as looking for culture coaches right now than DC's. And it's not a slight against the guys like Chris Armas. It's just I like Atlanta's ambition a bit more than DC's, but that's also
I mean, you're
DC.
You're talking about, and look, we don't know what any kind of a list of candidates or how many interviews or what it looks like with Atlanta, because it hasn't been reported. But on the DC side, it's been mostly assistants that they've been talking to, and Chris Armas, which almost started a riot within the fan base and maybe still could.
And see, I always hated I didn't like the Sean Payton comparison just because Sean Payton actually won a Super Bowl.
Right.
Like, Chris Armas, he came in halfway through the season and guided them to a Supporters Shield. That's great, but he didn't win the big trophy.
You are an SDH ninja, and coming in off the top rope is what people think on the Twitch pitch, Jarrett. You caught everybody by surprise.
That's what I'm here for.
Yes.
I just kind of linger for a couple minutes, and then I just wait. I pick my spots.
That's one way to do it.
Carlos Ruiz-esque. I just pick my spots and then flop down right where I need to be.
And then Ricardo Clark tries to kick you into another state?
Wouldn't be the first time. I mean, not the first Ricardo anyway.
That's very true.
I'm pretty sure I got Montoya mad once or twice. So
that's very, very true. Have you recovered from the shock of Celtic actually winning a match?
Yes and no. Like, okay.
Are you mad that they won a match?
No. And this is where I'm going to get myself in trouble with you and possibly with John as well, and with possible other people. I'm happy they won. I'm scared and disappointed, though, because all I know is that lineup that we saw today that had Ismaila Soro and had Doug Turnbull, or David Turnbull. Doug Turnbull's a traffic reporter.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how many goals he's going to score.
Fireball on the right wing.
Fireball's scrappy, dude. You don't want to mess with Doug. He's a good dude. He's scrappier than people give him credit for. You had a really young team out there that brought a lot of energy. Like Soro covered every inch of blade on the grass. It was amazing. That was all done today because they're saving the first team for this weekend's match to try and stay alive in the league that they're pretty much out of already. So I don't have any faith that we'll actually see that again. It was beautiful, and it wasn't perfect by any means, but it was ballsy, and it was exciting. And I don't know that we'll see it again. So that's why I'm kind of like...
Evening, Bandit.
That's why I'm kind of like... I'm very excited. I'm very happy. But I'm also nervous about going forward. Like, I'm worried Neil won't have learned this positive lesson of his.
I don't know if Neil's capable of learning anything.
Yeah.
I'm not either. Like, I'm just not. I'm over the shock, and I'm very happy because I'm not ever going to be upset that they won. I just have concerns that he won't have learned a lesson here.
I'm going to guess no. I'm going to assume that he is not because of what we've seen from him over the last 2-3 months. I think that's about the time frame we're talking about, yeah.
You even shifted it up top where you have Patrick Klimala, who was getting his teeth kicked in all over the place until he realized that he's going to actually have to be stronger in Scotland. And he didn't look the part for like 10 minutes a day and then just started making really good runs off the ball and freeing up space and was good. And I was confused. Yeah. I was like, they're moving without the ball. They're like defending as a unit. Shane Duffy's only being half of a bomb scare.
Man,
this is different.
It's not what you're accustomed to.
No, and that was nice. I was very excited by it.
So does that mean that Shane Duffy was the bomb or the scare?
Oh my God! I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the fact that they brought in Shane Duffy and potentially passed on Mark McKenzie. If that's how it went down, I'm gonna need another week.
Yeah, and they might be back in for McKenzie, although they haven't talked to Philadelphia in a little while, according to Ernst Tanner.
Yeah, and and I know there's a lot of naysaying about you don't want to go to Scotland, don't go to Celtic, this, that, and the other. I mean, I get it, but
well, maybe you don't go now because they don't have
Celtic
anything
fans,
other than the Scottish League. They're out of Europe. Maybe you don't go this in January because of that.
I wouldn't go.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go if I was him. But aside from that, and then the Scottish fans talking about, oh, he's from MLS. Is he? Well, you have no room to talk right now because you're a tire fire. First of all, second of all, you've brought in people. Scotland and Celtic have made a killing in the last 10, 15 years, bringing in guys from smaller leagues than MLS and flipping them down the road. Victor Wanyama came from a middle of the road team in Belgium and went to Southampton for 10 million. I think he came in for under $1 million. Bringing in guys from those other leagues is what they do. Bringing in a guy like McKenzie, who you're hoping will become a problem, capital P problem. That's what you're looking to do, is to bring in a guy like that and then sell him.
Of course.
Yes.
So yes, overall, I'm over the shock. It was a very nice shock. I enjoyed every minute of it. And I guess back to the league. Rangers won their group. Good for them. But Celtic did help the coefficient today, so that is good.
Yay!
A whole half a point.
They had one draw coming. They had one draw and 4 losses coming into today. Man, it's better than a swift kick in the nose.
In Scotland today.
Anyway, MLS. Gabriel Heinze.
What do you think? Well, it's 95%. It's not 100. It's 95, and I don't know what the exchange rate on rumors is between the U.S. and Argentina. But what do you think?
Let's go with it. It is ambitious, and I'm good with the ambition side of it. Let's do it. Everything that I have seen is, and I think Gustavo talked about Ola Gustavo. If you are lingering in the Twitch pitch somewhere, you think I'm a ninja. That dude is a ninja.
Yes,
but he talked about Heinze leaves places better than when he got there. That would be great. I would love that. And especially, it's especially hard to do in MLS because there is so much parity. There is a cap. There's a limit. If he's able to come in, if he's the guy, and he's able to come in and leave the place better than he found it, that's awesome. Let's go with it.
Yeah,
I will not be upset. I will not be upset by any stretch of the imagination. And if he comes in and doesn't work out, I won't be upset then either, honestly. And just because you're going for something that is ambitious. We don't know, because they are very much team no leaks about these sort of things. We don't know where else they're looking, really. We don't have concrete rumors, so it's hard to tell, where he fits compared to other people who may have talked about the job. So it's really hard to base it on that for me, for me to kind of to put a marker on it, because there's no reference point. I feel like we're in the middle of the ocean. There's no reference point about where's land.
No, it's an odd discussion because you've had 2 managers before, and they had a different kind of profile than Gabriel Heinze has, and I think that's something to be considered here. They had more experience. He's somebody who's going to need a little bit of time to adapt to what Major League Soccer is, what the positives and the negatives about it, the challenges that it can present. If you did not see Gustavo's thread about this, he posted it yesterday, and just a couple of highlights. Gustavo, for those of you who don't know, Buenos Aires Independiente fan. We connected with Gustavo when John and I broadcast the Carolina Challenge Cup game on ESPN Coastal. And Gustavo found that stream, and he was interested in what was going on with Atlanta because of the Argentine connections, and became a fan and follower of SDH and a good friend. Gustavo chimed in with best attribute about Heinze is the quality of his work. He says methodical, disciplined, and meticulous. Very Bielsa-like. Style of play is offensive, dynamic, normally fun to watch. And one thing to understand with that, you can have an offensive style of play, you can have a fun-to-watch style of play, you can have a dynamic style of play that doesn't necessarily score a ton of goals. Don't get hung up on the number of goals. Heinze's teams at Vélez, which were pretty universally acclaimed in Argentine media as attacking, as fun to watch, as forward-thinking, as progressive, as every other word we can come up with in that realm, scored 27 goals in 23 matches last season. They were still offensive. They were not a defensive team. Keep that in mind. He's also never had a striker like Joseph Martinez on any of his teams, and that could change a lot of things.
Yeah, that's the thing for me is like Joseph is such a wild card in all of this of like, oh, who are you going to bring in? I don't know, but you're giving them Joseph. Uh-huh. Even if Joseph comes back at 80% of what he was, 80% Joseph is better than maybe one or two strikers in this league?
Yeah. Absolutely. And a lot of strikers in the hemisphere. I mean, when we get past just MLS, I mean, you put Joseph in Mexico, he's going to be one of the top strikers. You put him in the Argentine league, he's going to be one of the top strikers. Like, he is that good. So,
frankly, his time with Frank made him like, it went from being, oh, that's one of the best finishers we've ever seen to, oh, no, that's actually one of the most complete strikers we've ever seen in MLS.
That's a really good point. He's a better player now overall than he was when he got here. And I think Frank de Boer's time with him, asking him to be more, really helps whoever's next, if it's Heinze, if it's somebody else. Other positives on Heinze, according to our friend Gustavo, he really pushes young players. He strengthens young players' spots in the first team. He wants the academy or the youth divisions of the club to be very professionalized. You're going to find that here. He develops young players. He improves their player sale. He's generally putting players in a better position than they were when he got there. Develops identity, strengthens the identity of the club. He's going to, in this case, his style fits the identity that Atlanta United has and wants to reinforce, so everybody's in alignment. Also, Gustavo says his French fluency, played in Marseille, played in PSG, that may help him get some players that maybe haven't been open to Atlanta United in the past. The negatives, hardly speaks English, according to Gustavo. I kind of had a question about that. I didn't really know. Not a long-term coach. Again, he's got 3.5 years of experience, period. The Godoy Cruz thing, throw it out. It was 10 games. He was still getting his badges, his certifications. 1 year at Argentinos Juniors. They got promoted. He didn't stay with them. He left. 2.5 years at Vélez, and he left. So keep that in mind. Changes in the coaching staff may affect his decision, and I'm not sure if Gustavo is referring to Heinze's staff, which I'm guessing he would. His lead assistant, Sejas, who had been with him at Vélez, has left to want to go be his own guy, so he's looking for a job. And Heinze has been linked to Fernando Gago, who just retired as a player, and also he's been linked to Javier Mascherano, who just retired as a player. Neither one has any coaching experience. Don't know if they would be lead assistant, second assistant, what that would look like. He also has not managed outside of Argentina. He has that limited experience, and it's all been in Argentina. So those are potentially negative. Positive, negative, I don't know how you want to look at it. His view of soccer journalism is very stubborn. That's also a very Bielsa trait. He looks down on people who ask him questions that he feels like are a waste of time. He really believes that only players who played professionally can give a proper opinion. I would probably disagree with that a little bit, but that's okay. He can be very demanding with the media. He's always had friction with the media. That could be very interesting and filtered through, translation. That could get really, really interesting at times.
Justin's going to earn that paycheck, baby, if this happens.
He would. Mm-hmm. I've mentioned it a bunch of times. He's very Bielsa-like. He played for Tata Martino at Newell's Old Boys, won the league with them, stuck around one more year after Tata left, got to the semifinal of the Copa Libertadores, very Bielsa style as a manager. It's mostly a 4-3-3. There is some verticalidad in wanting to play into the other half quickly, but that's where there are some differences, although Tata's teams, kind of evolved this way in Atlanta. Patience in possession is something we've seen with the teams at Vélez. They will have large possession numbers. They will get into the other half and then knock the ball around a bit. Keep that in mind. That's different than the way Frank kind of dominated possession. Both Tata Martino and Frank de Boer wanted possession. That's been something that has gotten completely out of whack. Frank de Boer's teams wanted possession, so did Tata's. Tata wanted that possession to be almost exclusively in the other team's half. Frank didn't care where it was, and Frank would use possession coming back to open up lanes attacking. Heinze's teams will open up lanes attacking through width more than verticalidad. The verticalidad is to play as far away from your goal as possible. To open up holes in the defense, he's going to stretch the field touchline to touchline. Width is the big thing for him. Lots of pressure, lots of aggressiveness defensively. He is very intense. His teams will be very intense, and players who do not follow that will not stick around. That will be a non-negotiable for him. It's a very interesting possibility. Yeah, I mean, and got a defender in Escobar, and I think Remedi, and I think Robinson, and I think Brooks Lennon would be somebody that he would really like. There's a lot of players who fit that. A lot of players in this team who fit that, and I think that's one of the areas that's most appealing about this. But you're waiting to see if it gets done, and I think you also have to keep an eye on these other possible jobs in South America, because he is in demand in South America, and it feels like, just like Pochettino earlier this year said, I'm ready to come back and manage. I think Heinze's got the itch to get back into the game somewhere, and the best job that he can get is that Atlanta. It very well could be, but there's others who are going to try, and the Chilean national team could be the next one who tries. It might be the last one who tries. Keep an eye on it, because there's a lot of interesting elements happening in this musical chairs in South America with the coaches.
Yeah, there's something about this for me that that I've kind of gone back and forth on, where I'm thinking this is where they feel like wherever they go, if it's Heinze, it's somebody else. I feel like this might be where you try and really pin this down. Like, you brought in Tata to start things for Atlanta United. It was a coup to get him, as we all know. But it was a coup to get him, but he was never felt like a long-term guy, and he wasn't necessarily going to play the kids a ton, as we saw. He came in to establish it and won a trophy in his second year. And then you went with a guy who was a bit different, not as different probably as people, think about now when they think back to FDB.
Not as different in intention. I think different in execution, but not as different as he wanted it to be.
Hoped could really establish a lot of the younger players and start building the conveyor belt for that pipeline. And now this feels like if this is what happens, to me personally, this feels like kind of a blending of those two, of that culture you tried to instill combined with, bringing in somebody who you got the conveyor belt kind of built with Frank. People's issues with everything aside, between the work that Frank and Glassy did with a lot of the younger players, you got the conveyor belt built. And that thing does take a while to run. It's not a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year thing. That takes 5, 6, 7 years before you start seeing real returns a lot of times, and consistent returns with young players coming up. But this kind of does feel like, pouring the cake batter into the pan, so to speak.
That's a good way to put it. John, just reflections on where things stand with Heinze, what we know, what we don't know, what we're guessing on, and kind of, what you're thinking on Thursday at 7:51 p.m.
Well, and I think that it kind of sounds like the Pochettino element in all of this. It's like, okay, there's a job opening up, and so now Heinze's name is attached to insert job here. And the match race, if the information is what it is, and everyone's now interested in Gabriel Heinze, it's now to the point to where, okay, where does Gabriel Heinze want to do? What does he want? Where does he want to go? Is part of his path in his brain to do national team duty? Is the path to go and find a job in a league on a touchline and then work his way to Europe? It is now that we have these ideas of a possibility of divergent paths. What is in his mind? What is in his heart? What does he want to do? Where does he want to go for those next stages in his career? If you're itching to get back, do you want to do the national team thing? Or if you're itching to get back, do you want to be a part of something in Major League Soccer and continue to build your pedigree going forward? I mean, it's interesting for me with that idea now of the Pochettino variant in all of this. It's like, okay, let's attach him to this. Let's attach him to this. Let's attach him to this. Let's find out where Heinze wants to go and what he wants to do. And then with all of the background that Gustavo has brought forward, all the stuff that you've brought forward about his philosophy. And if it does turn out to be Atlanta United, I'm looking forward to seeing it rub off on Moreno, on Dom, on Lennon, on Miles, on all of these guys that could benefit from something like this. So for me, it's all right. Now that we have this new idea going forward, it's like, let's see where it goes.
Jarrett, final thoughts on anything you want to hop into in like 90 seconds as we start to wrap? I know.
Go watch the end of Young Boys in Cluj.
Yeah, I need to see that because that sounds like
apparently
madness.
That was bonkers. The MLS Cup's this weekend. Go have fun with it.
We got plenty of shows before that to preview it for sure.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow, I'm sure. But
yeah,
the amount of pettiness involved is going to be amazing. It's gonna you're gonna be able to like power a city with it. Man, aside from that, I'm honestly waiting for player rumors at this point as well. Atlanta United too, adding players as well.
Yeah, not officially yet.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, it's reported that they will be adding player Robbie Mertz, good midfielder in USL this past season. 12 goals, 7 assists over 42 games with Pittsburgh over the last couple of years. Was drafted in 2019 by Colorado. Went to Pittsburgh instead. Jeff Reuter of The Athletic reports this and says that it's kind of a focus on earning an MLS opportunity. And you look at what Lawrence Weick did as one who got an MLS opportunity. You look at Ben Lundgaard, who made this exact same decision, not coming from USL, but coming from a guy who had been on loan to USL, who said, I want to go to a second team because I might be able to impress the first team coaches and get that MLS contract. So it sounds like Jeff is alluding to that being the case here, that Robbie Mertz would be doing well at Pittsburgh and say, you know what, I want to get to something bigger, and that step for me would be to join a second team in USL Championship as opposed to another independent team. So keep an eye on that one. That has not been announced yet. That has been reported by Jeff Reuter of The Athletic. John, final thoughts?
CONCACAF launched that new senior women's national team competition.
We talked about it.
The entire Fed. That was good stuff. I thought that was very, very cool to see. And just looking forward to the increased pettiness that is going to be discussed and occurring as we get closer to MLS Cup. And I'm going to have everything on rapid. I'm going to hit my last button a lot for the matches tonight with Liga MX at 10 and anything else I can find in between. But no, cool stuff out of CONCACAF this afternoon.
Yeah. Bart Keeler really excited about that. If you missed the interview with him talking U.S. men's national team, that was back in the first hour. The podcast will post here in just a bit. The rest of the week, programming-wise, tomorrow will be an evening show as well. Might be me solo. Jarrett might come flying in at some point because he's prone to do it.
Probably.
I'll say something and he'll just show up. John will not show up because he will be on the sidelines. Where tomorrow?
Norcross for Colquitt and Norcross in the quarterfinals.
There you go. So John will be busy on the high school football front. We'll talk soccer from 6 to 8. I'll be on 92.9 The Game with Andy Bunker from 10 to 2 tomorrow, and a couple bits of news on upcoming things related to that kind of sort of. Trivia with Soccer in the Streets on Monday night. Kevin Egan is back in the Quizmaster chair with me. And Andy Bunker is going to do a special round of trivia. His 10 questions of soccer trivia.
Wow.
Bunk will be joining us on Monday night to play in that.
It's not fair. Nobody knows anything about Washington University.
I was going to say Seattle Sounders trivia for 100.
It could be. I said whatever you want. You got 10 questions. You do it however you want to do it. So that's going to be Monday night. That will be at 7 o'clock. All you got to do is make a donation to Soccer in the Streets, and you get to play. You download the Kahoot app. It's fun. It's not hard to do. John did pretty well his first time after saying he wouldn't do well. So anybody can do well, right?
Being fast and guessing right.
That too. That's Monday night. So we work backwards. MLS Cup is Saturday. We're going to do a watch-along here on the Twitch, not anywhere else, just on Twitch. So have a second screen ready to go for us with MLS Cup. That's always an intense match. I don't know if it's going to be a high-scoring one. I'll give you a prediction tomorrow. We'll have the Power Hour Saturday morning as well, where we'll get deeper into predictions and tactics and such. Sunday is a very special day.
How special is it?
It will be the 5th annual. I can't believe we've been doing this 5 years. The 5th
What have we
annual.
done with our lives?
I know, Jarrett Smith. The 5th annual MLS half-day trade window show, which normally doesn't really lead to a whole lot, but we do it every year, and we're doing it Sunday morning, kind of. It's going to be at noon. We're not doing the whole 4-hour trade
Only
window.
time
That's
we ever
crazy.
did a 3-hour show.
And nothing happened.
Well, no, it's not that nothing happened. Things happened because Atlanta United was actually really active in 2016. It's just we already knew what was going to happen. I think except for the Romario Williams trade. I think that was the one we didn't know going in, where they got his rights. That was it. The rest of them we knew. We will be doing a trade window show. It will start at 12. It will also be a recap of MLS Cup as well. There are a few trades that have already been discussed. I want to say LAFC is mentioned with one. There could be a couple others. I think Austin will be busy. Most expansion teams are when this trade window opens. So,
Right.
Programming calendar. Tomorrow, 6 to 8. Saturday morning, normal power hour time, 10 to 11. MLS Cup watch-along, and we will have a fundraising component to that. Stay tuned. That will be probably a little bit before the match starts. It'll all be on Twitch. We'll all be watching the MLS Cup match together. Sunday, noon till probably 1-ish, maybe a little bit longer if some trades happen at the very end. Recapping MLS Cup, trade window stuff. Then we're back on the normal schedule on Monday. Soccer over there Monday will get a late start because of Soccer in the Streets trivia, so it'll probably start about 8:15 or so. We'll be kind of busy. But we'll have a lot of soccer to talk about, and hopefully you guys will be able to spend some of your time with us. Thanks for all that do. Thanks for all the questions. Make sure you're following us on all the social media channels at Soccer Down Here to keep up with our crazy calendars, because it will probably get crazier for some reason or something. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, Jarrett, you can join in for at least a little while, but you might just surprise me. I don't know.
Yeah. Probably.
We'll be back then. Y'all have a good rest of the night. Mucha plata, y'all.
Much plot,
Much plot, y'all.